I'm Jill Shah. I'm the president of the Shah Family Foundation. We work in collaboration and where community and healthcare and education meet. We work in collaboration with government and other big partners to kind of continue the work that we do kind of in tiny little test pockets. An example of this is what we've done with Dr. Ablon in creating something for a website that we built. A couple of years ago, we went deep into mental illness around that was connected with social media use. Anyone have any experience with that, with kids and social media use? And I sent it, Stuart and I have known each other for a long time. And I should introduce Stuart because I'm sure probably most of you in the room knew Stuart, but if you don't, he is an award-winning clinical psychologist with 30 years of experience in the field. He's authored 2 books, and he's also the founder of Think Kids at MGH. Stuart and I have known each other for a long time, and when we were launching this site, we wanted some folks who understood mental health and kids to take a look at the site. The site's targeted at parents, and it is loaded with information about what social media use does to kids' brains, but we were missing a piece of it. And Stuart sort of pointed that out to us, and he said to us, you know, it would be great if you could provide some information there about how to talk to your kids. And I, being a parent of kids, said, what do you mean? Because I found it so difficult to talk to my kids about social media use. I didn't have any experience with it. I didn't understand why they were so obsessed with it. And so unlike things, you know, things like cigarette use or alcohol or drugs, I had no experience. No, it wasn't a part of my youth. And so I found it very hard to talk to him about it. Well, Stuart helped us build out a number of modules on the site, Your Brain on Social Media. And it's been an amazing collaboration between the two of us. We support his work. So we're going to give you a little taste of what it looks like to use collaborative problem solving with a parent to talk to their kids about their social media use. But I want to start by asking Stuart to just talk a little bit about his work at Think Kids and the methodology that he's created called collaborative problem solving. So Stuart.
Right. Thank you, Jill. Hi, everybody. Oh, that was frightening. Y'all still there? Yes? Okay. All right. You've been at it for a while now, I understand. So you're hanging in there towards the end. We got the last slot, so we're going to try to keep you all engaged. But I'm thrilled to be here. As you heard, I have the privilege of directing a program called Think Kids, where we specialize in helping kids and adolescents who struggle with different forms of challenging behavior. And if you know anything about mental health struggles for kids and adolescents, they often, usually manifest themselves in some form of challenging behavior. And ordinarily, one might say, okay, well, this is good that we have this sign that tells us there's some mental health challenges that we need to be aware of. The problem is that challenging behavior is still tragically misunderstood. We still believe as a society that when a kid is exhibiting some form of challenging behavior, that it's willful, that they are just not trying hard enough to behave better, that they're using their behavior to try to get out of things, et cetera. And then as parents, as teachers, as clinicians, we usually respond by trying to motivate these kids to behave better, safe in the assumption that they're just not trying hard enough to behave well. And that flies in the face of probably a half a century of research these days that shows that kids who struggle to manage their behavior, as John alluded to, they don't lack the will to behave well. What they lack are the skills to behave well. And we're talking about skills like problem solving and flexibility and frustration tolerance and things like that. And so what we do at Think Kids is we try to help people gain a more accurate, compassionate, and ultimately effective understanding of what gives rise to challenging behavior in the first place. And we try to help parents in particular to understand that it is not as simple as kids do well if they want to, we just got to make them want to. That in fact, the philosophy that we espouse says that kids do well if they can. That every single one of our children, grandchildren, they'd prefer to be doing well if they could. No child likes to be struggling. If they could, they would. So what kids do well if they can means is if they could, they would. And if they're not, let's try to figure out what's getting in their way. And it can't simply be a lack of motivation. And what we know is it's not, it's a lack of skill generally. And so we've spent a lot of time helping parents, teachers, people have difficult conversations with kids about challenging behavior in tough circumstances to try to help address the behavior, solve problems, and build skills. And as a parent of 3 myself, I don't think there is a harder thing to talk about, Jill is not alone here, than social media. Social media is built to addict. It's malignant. There are some positive aspects, but they're buried in all kinds of negative impacts upon our kids. So when Jill reached out, I said, you know what? I think we could help with the how do you talk to your kids about this piece? Because that's the advice we all get as parents. Talk to your kids. Great. How do you do it?
And you have created something that you call collaborative problem solving, and which has some steps to it.
Yes.
And so it made a lot of sense when applied to a conversation with your kids about how, or your grandchildren about how to use social media. These steps make a lot of sense, especially when you kind of see them in action. So can you just talk through what are the steps?
Sure. And just clear, when we talk about steps, this is not a technique that you can use on kids. If you're trying to use it on someone, you're off to the wrong start. Okay. You do it with someone. It is a process. Okay. There's 3 ingredients. The first ingredient is really trying to listen, trying to understand where the other person is coming from. We call it the empathy step, because empathy doesn't mean just show you care. Empathy means try to understand the other person's perspective, point of view, concern, what's hard for them. That's the first step. The second step is where you get to share your perspective, your point of view, your concern. But note what I'm not saying, not your solution. Because as adults in a power differential, wow, do we like to come running in with our solutions. So what we say is, no, you get to express your point of view, your concern. And once you have those 2, theirs and yours on the table, you go to the third ingredient, which is where you invite your child, grandchild, et cetera, to problem solve with you, to try to come up with some solutions that address both parties' concerns. And one of the things that I think has been great about this collaboration is we've guided lots of people to have these conversations. And what's fascinating is if you get a child talking about social media, they will start sharing with you all of their concerns, which, interestingly, mirror many of our concerns. So it's not necessarily something where we're butting heads here. You hear these kids out there worried about the same things that we are, and that's a good thing.
That's a very good thing. So just in case some of you have not come into, I'm going the wrong way. In case some of you have not kind of come into the research on social media and social media use, it's kind of a devastating situation that we're in right now because we really haven't figured out how to reverse it or control any of the things that are being put forth to our kids. And, it's incredibly damaging. And so there's some statistics behind me, but, Dr. Waldinger talked about loneliness, but social media is tied to, and not just correlation, but more and more so we're seeing that there's there's causality behind this: anxiety, depression, suicidality, bullying, all sorts of really detrimental things for our kids. And so it's a really important thing to talk about, and it's a really difficult thing to talk about with our kids and grandkids, mostly because I think we don't understand it ourselves, but also because kids feel like it's something they're not supposed to be doing all the time. And so they feel a bit guarded about it. So in talking about it with my kids, Stuart, how would you use collaborative problem solving? How would you use that approach correctly to have a conversation, a conversation with great outcomes with your kids?
Okay. Well, and first of all, when we say great outcomes, look, this is a tough problem. It's not like one conversation is going to address the issue. But what our research has shown is you have these conversations repeatedly, you will solve problems. You'll address challenging behavior, but you'll also build the relationship with your child that you can then leverage when it comes to other problems.
Right.
And you help your child build skills in those areas that I talked about before. But so getting very practical, but the first thing I always say to people is, you're not going to talk about social media as a whole.
Right.
You've got to be more specific. It's much easier to solve a specific problem than a big general diffuse problem. So I would say, pick an aspect of social media to start with. And I would start with some low-hanging fruit.
Right. Now, I've become a great student of Stuart, so I know how to do this now, because I would have gone big and said, well, we got to talk about your social media use. But now I'll say something like, I don't love it when you're at the dinner table and you seem to be having a conversation with your phone as opposed to your family.
And I would say, Jill, I would say, all right, good. So you're being specific, right? So it's dinner table use. But notice how Jill is already sneaking her concern onto the table in advance of the conversation.
I'm like
right?
a D student, basically.
No, it's just so hard.
It's so
right?
hard,
It's
yes.
so hard. So what I teach people is enter this conversation as neutrally as possible. Because, by the way, when you bring it up with the kid, the first thing the kid is thinking is, okay, all right, give me the lecture,
Okay, yeah.
right? What have I done wrong? So if you want to talk about dinner table and, phone use,
Yeah.
you'll just bring it up by saying, hey, I want to, I encourage people to just be straightforward with kids. They appreciate it. Hey, I want to talk to you about dinner time and phone use. And by the way, a good way to start that is, and not just your phone use, because let's be clear, all of us have some of these problems as well, myself included, right?
Talk about your father's phone use too. No, it's mine. No, I got you.
Yes. So start with a neutral observation like that over something specific.
Right.
Okay. And then, the next step is just go into information gathering mode.
So I would say to her something like, what are you looking at when you're using your phone?
I would start by saying something like, do you think there's, anything worth discussing here? Do you see any sort of problems with how dinner time goes right now? Because I want to start sort of open-minded.
Oh, so I don't even talk about her phone.
What's that?
I shouldn't even talk about her
Get
phone.
there.
Ah, okay.
We'll get there.
Okay.
But I would just start general. And what do you think? And by the way, if she says, well, I don't think it's a problem, that's when we usually freeze and we're like, okay, how do we do problem solving with a kid who doesn't think the problem's a problem?
Right.
Right? So what you do is, and this is where I can give some very concrete advice, in this first ingredient, empathy, you're just trying to understand where they're coming from. Do 4 things and 4 things only. Okay. And this is crazy, but I spent like 5 years studying this, all the recordings we have of people trying this. And when it goes well, people are doing 4 things. And when it doesn't, people are doing anything but those 4 things. Okay. And it's the good news. This is not rocket science, right? It's ask questions. If that doesn't get you anywhere, take some guesses. If they say anything to you, just reflect it back in your own words. Don't parrot them. That's annoying, but just reflect it back in your own words. And if they start to get upset or shut down, you just reassure them that you're really just trying to understand. So if they say, I don't think it's a problem, you know what I say? I go like this. So you don't think it's a problem? Fill me in. I'm open to that. Why don't you think it's a problem?
I feel very comfortable
You feel comfortable with?
hanging out at dinner.
Okay. And
I
specifically,
feel like I come and I eat.
uh-huh. And specifically, if we're talking about like us using phones at dinner, do you have any concerns about that? Or you feel like how we do it right now is fine?
Well, everyone does it. So
Everybody uses their phone?
yeah, at dinner.
Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, sometimes if I'm out with friends, we have this rule where we all put our phones in the middle of the table, but we don't do that
You do that with your friends?
sometimes.
Well, that's interesting. How come?
Well, sometimes we just feel like we should all talk to each other because we're all there in person.
Well, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So wait, so you put the phones in the middle of the table with your friends because you guys want to talk to each other?
Yeah.
But that's different than what we do at home.
Well, yeah, but because, dad has to check his work emails and I don't know, sometimes Jack's on the phone too. So.
Got it. So you feel like other people have reasons that they need to or want to check their
Yeah,
phone. So it's different with us than it is with your friends.
It feels like that.
Feels different to you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And one feel better or worse, just different?
No, it's nice to be able to talk to everyone
You mean like when they're
when I'm with my friends. Yeah.
Okay, so that's nice.
That's
But it
nice.
sounds like you were saying before, there's some reasons that people like dad might need to check his email or
Well,
something.
do you think he does?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can think about that in a sec, but I'm curious what you think about right now. That was a little bit of a trap, by the way. Because what she said is, can we move on and let me hear where you're coming from? And I'm not.
I'm like a much better teenager than I am mother.
I'm not going to go there. I'm going to be, that's the second ingredient. The first ingredient is just hearing her out. And by the way, if you're thinking, what am I doing? I'm just following the script. Whatever she says, I'm just reflecting back. I'm asking some more questions. Okay. But what I'm not doing is expressing my point of view about this at all. Okay. And a piece of guidance I would give to everybody is empathy does not mean agreeing or disagreeing. Like she could say, I think having our phones there is great because it's so freaking boring talking to you guys at dinner. Like I hate it. You bring up the stupidest things. I hate dinner. With my phone, it's tolerable. You know what I would do? I would say, oh, wow. So you're saying with your phone, it's tolerable because without the phone, it feels awful at dinner, right? Is that what I hear you saying? And I'm not taking a point of view or perspective. I could completely disagree. I'm just reflecting back what I hear from her. Empathy is understanding. Okay. And we're just going to drill down like this. Now, here we've gotten pretty far. I think we know her perspective about it.
Yeah, definitely. But we don't know yet how she really feels. We just know what she perceives to be true.
Yeah, except she's saying to us so far, all right, feels better with my friends. I like talking to them, but at home, I mean, you could press upon that a little bit more. You could say, so it sounds like you might like to have more conversation at home, like you do with your friends.
Yeah. So can you flip the switch like that and expect them to kind of lean in and say, yeah, I would like to have more conversation.
Absolutely. And if they say no, you can go with it. Just follow the script. 4 things and 4 things only.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I said to you, all right, so sounds like you might enjoy things looking at home more like they do when you're with your friends. So we can all talk more.
Well, do you think they would do that? Do you think they'd put their phones aside?
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I feel like we could try it and see if everyone's willing. I don't know if they'll be willing.
And here, by the way, I've gotten her perspective on the table. The second ingredient is where I usually get to share mine, but this is what I was alluding to earlier. I don't even really have to share mine because mine's the same as hers. I'm like, I think I'd like to have more conversation, right? So I mean, I could say it. I could say, hey, I sort of, from my point of view, I think the same is true. Us connecting more would make sense. But it sounds like you're a little concerned about whether the rest of the group is going to be up for this.
Right, exactly. But now here's my question as a mother. How do you get from there, right? You brought your phone to the table and maybe you're working through a solution for not bringing it to the table. How do you get to the seemingly compulsive phone use?
Well, so one thing that I would say also is, remember to the group I said you want your concerns on the table? There's actually a solution on the table, which is phones should be in the middle of the table. I don't want to go to solutions yet. So, because the last ingredient is where I'm going to invite her to generate some solutions. So it would be like me saying, so it sounds like you would like things to look maybe a little bit more like it does with your friends at dinner, where we're talking with each other and people aren't so consumed on their
Yeah,
phone.
that'd be really nice.
And I share that perspective. Here comes the third ingredient. So what do you think we could do? I wonder if there's a way that we could have dinner where we'd be less tied to our phones and more interacting with each other. Do you have any ideas?
How to have dinner without our phones?
Yeah, what would that look like? I mean, I heard what it looks like with your friends, but maybe it needs to look different for us. I don't know.
I feel like everyone should leave their phones on the table, in the living room. And so you can't even touch your phone.
Oh, so like a different room.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And if somebody's like, I just got to go check something for a minute, or like somebody hears their phone.
They have to eat more broccoli. Oh, shoot, there I go as a mother again. If they have to check their phones, I don't know.
Well, it sounds like one of the things we've got going on here is we've got other people involved.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we need to have a conversation with everybody.
Okay.
How would you recommend we do that?
Let's have it over dinner. No, just kidding. Maybe we could have it when we're all getting ready to leave tomorrow morning.
Okay. All right. I mean, if you think that's a decent time.
Yeah.
Because here, in essence, what we have is we have other parties that need to be involved in the problem solving. We can't agree to solutions that impact or involve other people. If this was just the two of us, it's up to us to generate potential solutions. But we need some other involvement here. Now, Jill's being really easy on me today, right? I mean, she is being super easy. If she was much more oppositional, if she had a completely different perspective or point of view, this would be a little tougher. And you'd see it would sort of get stuck in the mud a little bit.
Right.
But one of the things I always say to people is, if it gets stuck in the mud, that's where you dig in, because that's where you're practicing skills. It's, for instance, when your child says, well, look, you're old. You don't understand how this goes, right? I get it that back in your day, maybe after dinner, you'd adjust those things on top of the TV and see if you could watch something, right? But like, we don't do that now, right? So this whole conversation is stupid. You just go right back to the first ingredient and you sort of re-regulate the child by repeating back what you've heard and say, look, I'm not trying to impose a solution here. I just want to hear where you're coming from. And it sounds like I understand where you're coming from. Is this thing stupid and you think it's fine and you don't see if there's any problem here? I gotcha. And I guess from my perspective, my point of view is, I would love to have some time where I feel like we're able to connect with each other more without the phones interfering. They're not interfering. Okay, I hear you. You say they're not interfering. And just as a mom, I guess that's something I would like to see. And I wonder if there's something we can do that would work for the both of us, because you don't think this is a big problem. And I'd like to have some opportunity to connect with you where I don't feel like the phones are sort of infringing upon.
How do you get them, though, to not push back when you start to present what you
They'll always push back when you present your perspective, your point of view, because most kids are used to, the second the adult presents their point of view, the kid's point of view just sort of lost, credence there. So they're gonna be dysregulated to some degree. I just go right back to the first ingredient, because empathy is regulating. I mean, if you want to calm someone down, and it's your kid, your colleague, your partner, you name it, it's all about empathy. It's all about listening to them. And if you go right back to that, you will regulate them. And if your kid was wearing what John was wearing earlier, you might even see signs of regulation in their brain right then and there as you empathize with them.
Okay. Or there'll be a red sign on the back telling us we have to stop, which will also.
Is that what's happening now? It's lunchtime?
It's lunchtime. So, but I think that gives you a kind of a good idea about how to dip your toe into a conversation where you're really leaning in with empathy and really listening to your child. Stuart, though, deals with kids who have very deep, wide issues. We kind of tied his whole program into this site. I took a quick screenshot of it. So, but lots of folks have used this now to kind of look through all of the videos. There's modules online. You can actually prepare a conversation with your child before you actually go and have the conversation with your child. And we wanted to present this to you because we thought this was a great example, not only of, philanthropic support, but this in-kind support that we did together, where we produced videotapes, and Stuart's been like in the local press, the national press, and on Mel Robbins and other national podcasts talking about how to talk to your kids about social media. So it's been a wonderful collaboration from our point of view. And I hope it has been for you too.
It absolutely has been. And let me just say a couple last things here. If you were listening to this and you were thinking, okay, this sounds sort of lovely and easy, and maybe this will be helpful if I have an easy kid. As Jill alluded to, we started this work entirely working in inpatient psychiatry units, in juvenile justice facilities, and in residential treatment facilities with some of the most traumatized kids with significant developmental challenges. And what we showed is precipitous drops in challenging behavior, improvements in relationship, and improvements in neurocognitive skills. And for parents, grandparents out there, one of my favorite findings from our research group is when you practice those three ingredients with a child, the child will build skills related to problem solving, flexibility, frustration tolerance. But guess who else will build skills related to problem solving, flexibility, frustration tolerance? Us. And it's not too late for us. You can teach an old dog new tricks, but it's all about repetition and practice. So it can work in the most challenging of circumstances. It can work in all of our homes. And I couldn't agree more, Jill. I mean, the Shah Foundation has been supportive of our work strategically in general, but this has been one of the most fun projects because they came with something they were interested in. And we said, I think we can help with a piece of this. And it became a real collaboration. And the in-kind support here has been tremendous because Jill's team has incredible skills when it comes to marketing, communication, outreach, video production. And we leaned heavily on that, and it's produced some pretty incredible results to, I think, reach many, many kids and families. So
Yeah.
it has been a true pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much.